We go live in 5 when I put the link.
Yep. So just to let our guests know that this is a great time. You got 7 minutes. If you wanted to do a share, you can find the stream
Yeah.
on the YouTube or Facebook. And then if you wanted to do a like, follow, share, just go ahead and copy the link of the stream, either Facebook or YouTube. But
Yeah, and I sent them the link to the Facebook Dare Me page. So.
Yep. Okay. Then
All
we're
right, let's
good
do
to
it.
go.
Let's go live.
Well, we're live. We
Oh,
are
I'm not
live.
getting it yet on my.
Well, you got to refresh.
Okay, there it is. I just got it.
Mm-hmm.
You rock, bro. Let me copy the link.
And we're also on Twitter.
Yeah.
All right. You on Facebook? Let's go
So
ahead and take-
can Melissa and Shivang hear me right now?
I believe they could probably
Yeah,
give
if
you
you
a
guys
thumbs
can
up.
hear me, the link is
Yep, they
live
can hear
on the
you.
Dare Me Facebook page, so you can click share, copy the link, and paste it anywhere you want on your personal
They
page.
got
or
you. I just
whatever
went
you
through
like.
that. So, yeah, they got it. Yay. All right. Let's go ahead and do a couple of shares here. What's on your mind? My mind is we are live. Post. There. That's one. We're just gonna. Looks like who's that? Steve's back on. Steve, you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Steve, okay, great. We actually went live. I'm not going to bring you in just now, but we went live. So the stream is up. If you want to do a like, follow, share, find it and do whatever. But the link is up and the stream is up. So we're going to kick off the show in just about 4 minutes. Glenn and I will talk for a few minutes, and then he's going to bring you right in, I think. So,
Yep.
and then I'll bring you in. Okay, so I'll bring you in now just so I can hear your microphone. Can you hear us? Okay.
I can hear you just fine.
All right, wonderful. I'm just going to pull you out.
Awesome.
Great. Everything's a good to
Well,
go.
hey, above all, y'all have fun and let's have a good show. Enjoy the show. It's going to be great.
Go ahead and do a share to a page. Okay, let's go ahead and share. No. All right, share now public. Yes, I thought I shared it publicly, but we'll do it again. More options. Share to a page. What other page? Yeah. Okay, I guess I can switch. What's on your mind? We are live. Boom, share. What just happened here? Let's go ahead and leave. Oops. Did it go? Yes. All right.
Yeah, like I was saying, Dean, I'm going to move through all this stuff on the top end real fast today because I want to get to the guests and not leave them sitting on ice.
Through the content advisory. Oh, we're going to run the video next. Okay, I'm ready to go. The longest part of it is this last couple of minutes when you're just like, no, I'm ready now. Okay. I think this new format's going to work out better. And
Yeah, I like it.
and you're familiar enough, I think, with that program that you could do it pretty easy. "90 seconds. And I'm going to throw the content advisory slide coming
Right on,
out of
right
the
Yeah, I'll
the
try to
video.
watch my tongue today since we have other guests and you get the idea.
Yeah. Just a few seconds, I'll have it up, but the mics will be open, so.
Hey, Dean, can you hear me?
Yeah?
What did we end up doing with those picks that I said, let's keep them separate from the flow and on standby for use during the interviews?
They're at the end of the slideshow.
They are at the end?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you told me about that drop-down menu, because if I do decide to show them, I can scroll right down to that and then back up, right?
Yep.
Cool.
All right. You ready?
I am ready whenever you are. Okay, everybody, we're about to go in about 20 seconds. Let's have a ball. It's going to be fun.
Oh, actually, I think I'm going to do the content advisory first.
On average, just in the United States, about 220 people die every single day from an opiate overdose. By the time we finish this show, 8 to 10 people are going to die from an opiate overdose. If we get even one person, one viewer with this program that we might be able to help with some of the information that's shared on here, then it's all worth it. Hey everyone, it's Glenn Victor, host for the Dare Me podcast. We are so excited about today's show. I've really been looking forward to this one. This is going to be a special show. So welcome to everybody here on the West Coast, where I'm coming to you from, live from Sacramento, where it is 6 o'clock. And we want to bring our old pal and co-host and producer of the show, Dean Baker, in from Post Effects Productions in Orlando on the East Coast.
Glenn.
What's happening, Dean? You ready?
I'm ready to go.
I know we got a busy show lined up for you, and of course it's 9 o'clock on the East Coast, so we're so happy to have you here with us today, too, Dean. It is June 11th, Sunday, June 11th, 2023, and we are into episode 13 of this podcast.
Unlucky 13.
I know, it blows my mind, Dean. I can't believe it. Where in the world does the time go? Well, today's episode I've really been looking forward to, because we haven't really touched on this topic that in depth yet on the program. We've talked about it, but today will be the first deep dive, as they say, into the topic of enlightenment. And, of course, the name of the show is Dare Me, which, as we've talked about on this program, has a lot of different meanings, kind of like coming out with my recovery, dare me to do it. Which, of course, I've done. We also have these hashtags across the top of the screen. Thanks for bringing them up, Dean. And that's kind of the focus of this show. We talk about drugs, addiction, recovery, enlightenment, and then a real focus on music and exercise. By the way, on the topic of music, we want to say thank you again to last week's guest on the show, musician and recording artist Dustin Warbear. If you haven't seen that show, go back and check it out, and definitely look up his stuff on YouTube and all the things. He's out there on all the platforms. What a talented artist. So thanks again to Dustin for being on last week. So today, our focus will be that hashtag of enlightenment, and we're going to be talking about enlightenment, spirituality, things to that nature, and how it affects people in the recovery community. And so, speaking of the recovery community, I got to bring our guests in because they're on standby, and I'm so excited to have our guests on the show today. So let's start with my old friend and partner in crime, if you will, Melissa Dawn, who's coming to us from Detroit, Michigan. Hi, Melissa. Welcome to the Dare Me podcast.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, God, are you kidding me? We're so grateful you were able to join us. And I just got to do a brief introduction. Melissa is a life coach and recovery advocate and has over 7 years clean. And of course, you know, Melissa and I talked about all this prior to the show. And she's really looking forward to giving some input on the show today. And, of course, Melissa, we're looking forward to hearing from you. So hang tough. We got to bring our other two guests in. We also want to bring in that boy, Steve Lawrence, my pal. And, again, partner in crime from East Side in Detroit, Michigan. Steve also a recovery advocate and social media influencer. Steve, welcome to the Dare Me podcast, bro. Glad to have you.
Hey, Glenn, glad to see you guys.
Yeah, we are so happy to have you. And by the way, y'all, Steve is very active on social media. In fact, Melissa, I was telling you before the show, Steve's got thousands of followers out there on TikTok, posts those daily inspirational videos. I just love what you're doing in the recovery community, Steve. So we'll talk to you more in a moment as well. And now we got to bring aboard our friend, also from Detroit, Michigan today, my other partner in crime, Shivang Tripathi, aspiring recording musician and artist and student and recovery advocate. Shivang Tripathi, welcome to the show, Shivang.
Thank you guys for having me. Appreciate
bro, we're so happy to have you here with us. Shivang and I have been on this journey together since I got clean again a couple of years ago. It was 2 years for me in March. And it's just, it's like I say all the time, Shivang has an old soul. And we've developed this interesting bond and friendship. And, man, I'm just so grateful to have you here on the program with us today, Shivang. So anyways, we want to keep you guys on hold just for a few minutes because, in this program, I always like to recap a little bit about what the purpose of this program is. We do have a lot of regular viewers and followers. In fact, man, I can see we already got 7 people watching. We got somebody in the chat here. Hi to Lori T in the chat.
Right.
But I always like to recap the purpose because even though we're into the 13th episode, a lot of times we get people watching for the very first time. And although we are going live, we do get most of our viewers and listeners with the recorded versions of these programs that get posted after we're done with the show. And we literally get hundreds of people because we see in the analytics and all that stuff. So in case somebody's watching or listening for the first time, want to recap the purpose of the show. Then we kind of touch on a couple things in the news. We'll do a couple shout-outs, some current events. And I just want to encourage you, Melissa, Steve, Shivang. You know Shivang because you've been a guest on the show before. You guys are welcome to chime in on any of the stuff I'm going to be talking about till we get deep into our interview about enlightenment and spirituality and all that. Anything. And you know me, I can run my mouth, so you feel free to just jump right in and cut me right off, interrupt me, no problem, So with all that said, Dean, let me go ahead and recap the purpose of this show, y'all. I decided to do this podcast in hopes that we might be able to help anyone who may come across our information or anyone who may be looking for information on how to kick dope. For me, specifically, it was opiates this last time around, because this ain't my first rodeo with living clean, y'all. I got clean as a younger man. I started using as a young kid, teenager. I got clean for the first time, just shy of 25. Stayed clean almost 17 years. Had a horrible relapse for about 5, stayed clean again for 6, and then I broke my freaking ankle. And not to make excuses, I accept responsibility for my own choices, but I had to have a couple of surgeries on my ankle, and when I did, they tossed me the bikes, and I started taking them, and I had no business taking no narcs, especially with my history with addiction. Should have known better. I did anyways, and I got hooked and went on a 9-year run, y'all, hooked on those opiate pain medications, and at the end of it, I was snorting fucking heroin because I'd get dope sick. And if I couldn't get the good, as they say, you know, the dope man or the plug would say, hey, Glenn, you know, until we get some more of the pills, man, we got this to hold you over. It's an opiate, so at least you're not sick. And, of course, we know with today's world, man, that's a freaking roll of the dice, because that shit's all laced with fentanyl and xylazine, which we're going to be talking about on the show today, and God only knows what else. And believe me, I got war stories. We've told some of them on this show. We'll tell more moving forward. The point is, when I was trying to get clean again, I was trying to kick for a couple of years, y'all, before I actually was finally able to, thank God. I looked for a lot of information on Google, YouTube, how to get through opiate withdrawals, how to kick opiates, all that stuff. And I found some good information out there that we've shared on this show, and we'll share more moving forward. But I didn't find anything like this, not what we're doing with this show. And so that's our hope, is that if we are able to help even one person, that's kind of our motto, then it's all worth it. You know, like I've said, you know, it took a little bit for me to come out and be so open about, you know, my struggles with addiction. But I got to a point when I really had a chance to think about it, where I thought I have no right to keep to myself what I went through and how I was miraculously able to come out the other end of it and be living what I think is my best life now, and hope that's an inspiration to somebody who may be looking for information, just like I was online, whether it's YouTube, Google, any of the platforms, you know, then it's all worth it to me. So that's the purpose of the show, y'all. And then those hashtags that we showed, you know, that's kind of the topics we try to focus on. But nonetheless, with all that said, there's an old saying, you know, there's topics you kind of sometimes want to avoid conversation on. And that, of course, includes money, politics, and religion. And Dean, if you want to bring up our very first, you know, we got a lot of pictures and stuff today. I thought I'd show this one. When someone tells you not to stir the pot, but you know you're going to. And that's kind of how I felt today, because, you know, we're not really going to be talking about a religion, and there's certainly no debate on this program, but we are going to talk about spirituality and enlightenment, and it's just going to be a great, lively conversation. And so I just thought I'd show that. And then, you know, there's that old joke, you know, I try not to discuss religion, politics, or money until my in-laws have a big dinner party. So talk about stirring the pot. I just couldn't resist showing that on there. And then, you know, for someone who might get easily offended, I just thought I'd pop this up there. You know, whenever you get too worked up about those topics, just remember, we're all just a grain of sand in the desert, you know, out there in the universe, you know. And so there again, money, politics, religion can be sensitive topics. I'll also say, I've shared on this program before, man, if it's taboo, all the more reason I want to talk about it and break down any barriers, because that's a lot of what this show is all about too, getting away from that stigma of addiction and things to that nature. So once again, wanted to show this picture. This is our boy Steve, who again, we're so grateful to have you on the show, Steve. As you know, you and I met over at a place called the East Side, Illinois, in East Side Detroit, and just so happy to have you on here. Of course, there's the beautiful Melissa, and we're going to talk to her in just a second. And Melissa, I'm really excited to hear about, you know, what's going on with your life coach, you know, business and things to that nature. And then there's that boy Shivang, and this is a picture of Shivang at an actual puja that he invited me to attend. And so I couldn't resist showing that as well. So I do want to put just a little bit of a disclaimer out there. that I met all three of our guests today in the recovery community. And although each of us are active and involved in the recovery community, 12-step programs and things to that nature, we want to be crystal clear that we are not here to represent any 12-step program. We ain't trying to break no traditions, the AA, NA, fucking A, whatever, as the old saying goes. But it certainly doesn't mean that we can't talk about them. You know, I say on this program many times, I have my program and I have my recovery. You know, for me, when it comes to the program, I'm an NA guy. You know, I've been to AA. We're going to talk a lot about AA and the 12 steps on the program today, but that's me. But my recovery includes a lot of other things. I go to yoga, I go to the gym, I try to eat healthy, things to that nature. So just wanted to put that disclaimer out there that, man, we ain't trying to rub any of the gurus or the police in the 12-step programs, as we jokingly say. You know, we're just out here recovering out loud. And all the more reason I appreciate all of our guests being with us here on the show today. So now we're going to do some shout-outs. Dean, I lost my slide there. I'm not sure. There we go. Okay, so I want to do a shout-out. And Steve, you and I were talking about this before the show. This is that cake I was telling you about. This is about the coolest NA anniversary cake I've ever seen. You and so it says, "No shame in my recovery game. Congrats, Deanna R. on 2 years clean." And I saw that posted on social media. I said, man, we got to post that and show it, you know. So we want to say congratulations to Deanna. And now we got to say congrats to that boy Primo. I talked to Primo on the telephone today. I told him we wanted to do a shout out. He said, have at it, bro. So there's a picture of Primo. And you, Steve, we were talking about how at that club on the east side, man, we call it the Cake Factory, because whenever somebody's celebrating an anniversary, man, you guys definitely have the cakes out there. And then this next picture, this is amazing. And I talked to my old friend Dee on the phone today. There's Dee Miller from Central Florida, who I've known probably about 35 years. She celebrated 40 years clean this past week, y'all. 40 freaking years. And she is just as active in the program as she, you know, today as she is, you know, been all these years. And she's, you know, just a wonderful, wonderful person, and just wanted to send a shout out to Dee. We were both talking about that South Florida Regional NA Convention coming up in August, and we're both hoping to attend. That's a great one. So, Dee, if you're watching, I hope to see you there soon in August. So, shout out to Dee, and congrats again on your 40 years. So now, y'all, we're going to transition to the news, and I'm going to try to shotgun through this stuff as quick as I can, because I do want to get to our guests. So I appreciate y'all riding along with me on this. We always try to hit on at least one or two topics in the news each week, and this was a big one. Here in California, there was a settlement, and we talked a little bit about the Purdue Pharma settlement a couple of weeks ago, but this week here in Cali, Walgreens, CVS, and others reached settlement to pay $17.3 billion for their role in the Cali opiate crisis. And, you know, I'll tell you, man, for some people, that picture might be a little bit of a trigger. But if you read that, it says a bag of evidence containing the synthetic opioid fentanyl disguised as oxys is shown in this photo. And man, I talked about some of my war stories, and I will tell y'all, I came across some of them fake damn pills too, and it is a miracle that I ain't dead, man. And so anyway, just wanted to show that one. And when we show these news stories, we do try to show different sources, because we don't ever want someone to think we're trying to slant the news, because there are conservative and liberal, you know, news outlets out there. So this one I thought was interesting because, you know, it states in this little information that, you know, these outfits just, you know, were fueling this epidemic when all the red flags were there. And so, as it says right here at the bottom, Walmart is also expected to settle soon. With up to 3.1 billion. So anyway, I thought I'd show this last one as well. If you look at the last paragraph, it says the money from the settlement will be spent to improve substance abuse treatment facilities, increase the availability of Narcan, hopefully provide more training to law enforcement and first responders, and also address the needs of the communities of color and vulnerable populations. So, we're just, we like to think of ourselves as another watchdog group, because when you're talking about billions of dollars, y'all, there's always going to be some shit in the game, and some of that money is going to probably end up where it ain't supposed to be. But we'll keep monitoring it, and we were just glad to see that, this settlement was reached, and hopefully there's not a big delay in getting those funds out there to hopefully help make a difference and start saving some lives. And this is just another headline we came across from Fox 40 out in this area. CVS and Walgreens amongst companies ordered to pay the billions in the opioid settlement. And here again, this from the Patch, you can see, their headlines. So again, we just like to show different headlines. And then now we're going to go into the next story. And Steve, you and I talked about this briefly before the show, because this one we pulled from the Detroit Free Press. And Dean, you recall just a couple of weeks ago, we started talking about this on this show. This drug xylazine, the street name for it is Trank. It's an animal tranquilizer, is like really killing people left and right. And it's actually, there's no law. It's not illegal in the state of Michigan right now. And the Oakland County Sheriff just announced this past week they're finding Trank in 85% of the fentanyl seized now. And it's a deadly additive that the dope dealers are just adding to the dope to make it more potent, because when you're a dope fiend, man, it's like, hey, the good keeps them coming back for more, but it's fucking killing people. They did outlaw Trank in Florida. We talked about that on the show a couple weeks ago. It's outlawed now, other than for veterinarians, because that's what it is. It's an animal tranquilizer, but the dope dealers started adding it to the xylazine. So we just want to put that out there, man. If anybody's watching this show and you're still using, don't fuck around with that stuff, man, because, if it's laced with fentanyl and xylazine, boy, you're really playing Russian roulette there, man. Like I said, thank God I'm still alive. So, yeah, here's just another headline I pulled from Detroit. This was WXYZ TV. Same thing. They said dangerous drug legislation introduced to make xylazine illegal in Michigan. And I'm sure that'll probably pass. Like I said, they already made it illegal in Florida, and it's showing up in states and cities all across the country now. It's just crazy how this stuff takes off like that, So
Steve,
anyway, y'all, we wanted
Steve,
to cover a
a
couple of
question?
topics in the news. Now we're going to transition into a couple current events. And I'm shotgunning through this stuff, y'all, because I really want to get to our guests, and I really appreciate y'all hanging tough with us. Like I said at the beginning, we like talking about music a lot on this show. And, of course, there's some crossover here. Prince died of an opiate overdose. And we talked about it on this show before, man. We showed pictures of him, like, stalking the Walgreens, riding his bicycle outside. Freaking Prince, And so, anyway, his birthday was just this past week. And they did something cool at Target Field in Minneapolis that I thought was a great recognition. They call it Prince Night. And so just thought I'd show a couple pictures. Beautiful ballpark there. I've never been to Minneapolis. I'll tell you, I'd love to go to Paisley Park. It's kind of the Prince version of, the Elvis Graceland thing. And I've seen pictures and videos online. So just wanted to, talk about that briefly. And now this next current event, we'll get through this and then we're going to get to our guests, y'all. But we got quite a few pictures to show here. We want to say happy anniversary to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Celebrated the 88th anniversary of that program this past weekend. And of course, Narcotics Anonymous and all the other 12-step programs, OA, GA, whatever A you pick, all grew out of the 12 steps that were developed by Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob Smith when they started AA. And they say that, they kind of go, this is a flyer, by the way. They have this Founders Day in Akron, Ohio, every year to commemorate this occasion. And this was a flyer. Well, you can see, man, I'm not going to sit here and try to read all that stuff to you, but they have a ton of stuff going on. And every year, about 10,000 people, not just from across the country, but literally from around the world, attend this event. And so, they consider June 10th as the day that AA all started, because that's when Dr. Bob, had his last drink. And so that Founders Day is a really cool event. There's a picture of Bill Wilson. I just thought that was a really cool picture of him. There's another picture of Bill. That's Dr. Bob. And, of course, there's a picture of them two together. And, everybody thinks of them as old timers. But, hey, man, back in them days, they were people just like us. You know what I mean? And so I always like to – we talked about this on the show before. If somebody's new to recovery, or maybe even a person who's been around the program for a long time, if you've never seen the movie called My Name is Bill W., I can't recommend it enough, y'all. It was one of those Hallmark movies, and it starred, James Garner and what's his name? James Wood is right there on the top. And it is just a great historical perspective of how the whole program started. It really is an awesome movie. Here's a picture of Dr. Bob's house. Now, they've painted it. It's not yellow anymore. It's gray. So this is a little bit of an older picture, but it's like this house right in the middle of this neighborhood in Akron, Ohio, and it's like a museum. And the neighbors have embraced it that, people converge on this house during this weekend every year, and there's just a parade of traffic and cars that go through the neighborhood. And here's a picture of what it looks like today. This is, it's a gray house, and it's interesting. We're going to talk about this in a second. If you count the number of steps that go from the sidewalk to the porch, guess how many it is? Yeah, it's 12 steps, man. So we were there, and buddy mine, he's like, the original 12 steps, so it's just kind of ironic how that worked out. This is inside. This is the living room. So you see, you can go in there and walk around, get a vibe for the place. This is an upstairs bedroom where Bob and Bill would take drunks that were trying to get sober, and they would literally help detox them in this room. And I don't know if it's still the actual bed, but in this room, and walk them through it and that whole thing. And when you go to the house, you can actually go up there and lay on that bed. We were there joking around, putting our foot on the floor like, oh, I got the spins, man, and it's just really a cool vibe and energy in that house. This is the kitchen, and they have a coffee pot right at the table, and believe it or not, you can actually sit down and have a cup of coffee in the same kitchen as Dr. Bob and Bill Wilson did when they developed and started the AA program. How freaking cool is that? And it is a historic place listed on the National Registry. There's a plaque that's outside of the home. Just thought we'd show that. And they also have this cool rock there with the American flag on it, and it has information all about the house. And so, guess what? If you haven't figured out where I'm going with it yet, I haven't been there for Founders Day, but I have been to Dr. Bob's house and gone through it. And I can't recommend it enough to anybody who's in the recovery community. I say it, and we're going to talk about it in a minute, talking about enlightenment and spirituality. The older I get, man, the more I believe in vibes and energy and all that sort of stuff. And when you go in that house, man, you sure feel it. It's almost impossible not to get filled up. So, here I am at the kitchen table having a cup of coffee at the same table in the same kitchen as Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob when they started the program. How freaking cool is that? And then this is a famous picture, painting that's called The Man on the Bed. In fact, Shivang, you remember they have this painted on the wall over at the East Side Alano and a lot of recovery spots around town. And this is supposed to, kind of be, a mimic, if you will, of that picture I showed of that bed. And so this is a real famous painting. That's supposed to be Bill and Bob there working with somebody trying to get sober. And so today I thought we'd show this real quick, and I'm almost ready for our guests here, y'all, that AA has a presence and can be found in about 180 different nations worldwide with an estimated membership now of over 2 million people. And then, as you see, about 1.3 million of those are right here in the United States. And then I want to talk a little bit now about our topic today, enlightenment and spirituality, because for a lot of people, when they come into 12-step programs, trying to get sober, trying to get clean, whatever the case may be, you'll hear this a lot, that people will say, oh, God, here come all the Jesus people, or here comes the God word, or whatever, man. I ain't in here for all that. I'm just trying to get clean, or whatever. And in the AA program, at the beginning of each meeting, they read this reading called How It Works. And they do in NA or OA or GA and all the others. In the AA program specifically, I pulled this, and it says, without help, it is too much for us. But there is one who has all power, and that one is God. May you find him now. So I thought that was, really interesting to share. And then I also want to talk about the 12 steps a little bit, because that's another area where the word God comes up. And I've often said in step 2, it says here, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And like I started to say, a lot of people come into program and they're just like, man, I'm just trying to get clean, get my life back on track. I don't need all this God stuff, man. Y'all are trying to run on me, you know what I mean? But it is a big part of the program. And so in step 2, I often joke around, but half serious, say, hey, they're setting us up for the God word, and they call it a power greater than ourselves. And then you get into step 3, and bam, they smack us right in the face with it. We made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. Now, just want to be crystal clear for anybody who doesn't know, AA, NA, all the A programs, they're not religious organizations or whatever. It's just trying to introduce people into spirituality, because the sickness can be physical, mental, and spiritual. And as you work your way through the steps and get some time behind you, then you get to what we call the maintenance steps of 10, 11, and 12, where you try to live in the program. And here, as it says, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him. And then you see the rest there. So I just thought it'd be great to kind of review all that information we just went through, kind of set the stage, lay the groundwork for the conversation that we're about to have with our guests today, and get us in the mindset. And I thought we'd share this, because this was on a recovery site talking about this whole God thing, and how some people do get turned off by it when they come in the program. I talk about how, there's that saying around the rooms of, some of us come in and we're too terminally hip and fatally cool to, start to be open-minded about talking about God or spirituality or anything. And that certainly was the case with me, especially when I was a younger man. And so I like the way this little clip described it. It said, God is a neutral term, and it's best not to get caught up in how other people choose to define it. And that's one of the things that's beautiful about 12-step programs, is everybody gets to choose and pick their own. So here's a picture, y'all, that I had to show, because I want to share a little bit about my journey with spirituality. And, I got involved in yoga probably about 16 years ago. And when I got clean this time, I shared that with Shivang. And Shivang, who we're going to talk to in just a minute, is a practicing Hindu and held a thing called a puja. And this is me with Shivang and his brother Shu. So let's bring Shivang in now and ask, Shivang, will you explain to us just a little bit? And I'm going to click through some pictures as we talk about it, what a puja is and the intention behind it.
Yeah, so it's kind of crazy, because I was taking an exam a couple hours ago, and literally one of the questions asked me to describe a ritual in your tradition, and I described the puja. Now we're talking about it now. I didn't even think that this was going to be a topic until you brought it up, but yeah, it's interesting. But a puja is pretty much, it's a ceremony that people in Hinduism they have when there's any kind of big change coming their way, right? If you get a new house, if you get in a new relationship, if you're about to have a kid, or if you're going to get clean, we held a puja for me when I got clean, and it's pretty much an acknowledgement to the gods that Hindus believe in, and it's asking them for their blessings. And there's a big fire, as you can see in the middle of that picture that Glenn posted. There's a big fire pit, and we send it different kinds of roses and petals and different kinds of offerings.
Here, I'm going to go to the next pic, and yeah, here's another. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Shivang. But.
No worries, man. And yeah, it's all just symbolism, pretty much, just showing our appreciation to our higher power. You know, Hinduism, for people that see, Glenn defined me as a practicing Hindu, and I joke because for me, I always tell people that I kind of work my own religion or spiritual principles, if you want to put it that way. I grew up in the Hindu family. And in Hinduism, it's a polytheistic religion, which means they believe in multiple gods, right? It's kind of like Greek mythology. There's a god of war, there's a god of death, there's a god of love. And yeah, this ceremony is pretty much just to honor and ask for their strength and their love and their blessings and their guidance in the rest of our journeys. You know,
well, Shivang, I can't thank you enough for sharing that, man. And more than that, I can't thank you and your family, your mom and dad, your brother, and the rest of your family that was there for inviting me and embracing me. Man, I'm trying not to get filled up talking about it, y'all, because it was so powerful for me to attend that thing. And that's one of the things I'm so grateful for with my involvement in the 12-step programs. It has made me an open-minded person to things like this, because there was a time in my life where I would have said, I ain't gonna be caught dead being seen at that thing. And man, it was a truly life-changing for me. And so we'd also like to show a quick video clip. It's only about 30 seconds of actual part of what was going on at the puja. So Dean, if you want to play that now, let's go ahead and watch it.
That's standing on the right side with the little orange thing on, orange little capish, whatever that is that he's wearing on his shoulder. He's pretty much, they call him the Maharaj, which means he's like the priest. He's the one that's facilitating, and he does a lot of chantings, because in Hinduism they believe a lot in mantras. A lot of it is focused on chantings and vibrations that you send out. So he does a lot of the chantings, and he's kind of guiding you through it.
Well, Shivang, once again, I can't thank you enough for talking to us a little bit about the puja, and of course, like I said, for inviting me to attend. This was last summer, and I'll tell you, the energy and the vibes from that still affect me and have carried over, and I hope to attend one with you again soon, bro. So again, I just wanted to say, for anybody who may be, working on getting clean or involved in the programs, and you're trying to, connect, if you're not involved in any kind of spirituality, religion, or whatever, being open-minded, this may be a avenue or a path you may want to look into a little bit. And that was the video we just played. And this was at the end of the puja, by the way. And this is just one table. There were what, Shivang? There must have been 5 or 6 of them.
You got to get the pictures of me caught slipping, huh?
Yeah, but we were chowing, man, and it was all great Indian food, vegetarian stuff. And it was just such a cool vibe, y'all. I just can't even explain to you how great it was. And so, Shivang, I really appreciate you, your mom, your dad, your brother, and all the rest of your family and friends that were there for being so nice to me that day. It was
Yeah.
truly wonderful.
Of course, man.
So
Of course.
I want to talk about this briefly too, y'all. Life is so freaking bizarre to me because, I didn't plan it this way, but I attended my very first kirtan last Friday. Of all times, right before the weekend when we do this show all about enlightenment and stuff. And if you don't know what a kirtan is, this is something I pulled offline. It's kind of a celebration in the Hindu and Hare Krishna community, so to speak, where people get together and they play music. There's guitar players. We had a congo player there. There was a guy with the accordion, and we were just singing all these different mantras and chants, as Shivang mentioned, and everybody was just vibing. People brought some vegetarian dishes and some sweets and stuff, and so I was exposed to this through this yoga studio I go to that has a meditation workshop that I went to, and they told me about this thing. And it's absolutely free, by the way. There's no charge. You can make a donation if you want. But you can see, it lists, I thought it was cool to post this, some of the benefits: inner peace, happiness, opening the heart with feelings of love, compassion, and all that kind of stuff. And it was just a ball. This is the studio here in the Sacramento area that I go to, and it says music and meditation there, and it's kind of covering that picture. But if you can see, that's kind of how the vibe is. Everybody just sitting around, vibing, having a good time, and all that kind of stuff. This is, as you pull up to the place, I just thought I'd show a picture of it. It's just such a cool place, y'all. And this is the room where we had the kirtan at the Lotus Garden Yoga and Meditation Center. For people here in the Sac area, if you're watching, man, I can't recommend that place enough. It's freaking awesome. And so we're going to go into this now because I'd like to bring Steve into the program. And Melissa, I'm going to get to you in a second. I promise, girl. Steve, you and I talked briefly about this, that, in recovery, we talk on this show about 12-step programs. We just gave a little bit of a history of AA and, of course, NA we talk about and all that. But we talked about how, we come from a school of, no 12-step program has a monopoly on how to get clean and sober or stay that way. And recovery dharma, I thought, is just such a cool thing. And it kind of ties into, what we were just talking about, but it uses Buddhist practices. And I know you were involved in bringing that to the Southeast Michigan area. Would you talk to us a little bit, Steve, about your involvement with this program and the journey there?
So a friend of mine, when I was actually about 5 years in recovery, I had some people that I was helping through their recovery, and they were doing the work. And what had happened is when I went to treatment, we had a meditation time, and it was one of the few times in my recovery where I left a room and I felt very angry. Right. And I can only address that to the fact that I probably wasn't ready to sit with me in silence yet, So 5 years goes by and I have these men doing some work, and I'm like, how do I tell them to do these things if I haven't done that? So a friend of mine, Gwendolyn, was already practicing refuge. So I started going to a place called Still Point Temple in Detroit, right in the heart of Detroit on Trumbull and Canfield.
Right.
And I sat through that. And what happened is I had told myself, a lot of other things have changed since you started recovery. Maybe this has too. And when I went there, I found a lot of peace and a lot of joy. But what happened was there was a lot of things going on in refuge recovery that a lot of people in that community were unhappy with. Right. So we went to Chicago for the conference there. And while we were there was decisions made that, like, some people were going to stay with refuge if they wanted to, but if you wanted to separate from it, and mainly its leadership, that we were going to start something else. So we had a meeting while we were there, came back, and just like most recovery programs, it was a bunch of group consciousness. People decided what they wanted to do. Did you want to stay with refuge? Did you want to go to Dharma? What was it? Most of the groups in Southeast Michigan did decide to go with Dharma.
Right.
So there's been, the original book. I have a manuscript of it. I have the other ones that have been written. Jar and some other people are so very heavily involved in what's going on with it and how they, what's going on with it. They had one of their, I think their third summit or fourth summit this year where they got together was in Seattle. But that's all it really was. It was just some people that decided that they wanted to go a different direction with their, with their recovery and try some other things. So that's what we did.
Well, let me ask you this, Stephen. Thank you so much for sharing the background on that and all. And what I'd like to do now, because I did talk or, kind of put this out there in some promos I did for the show, that, when you and I first met, it's been over a couple of years ago now, I just found it fascinating to hear your story in some of the meetings we've been in together. I remember we were at a workshop at a convention, and how you shared openly and honestly about being an atheist. And I asked you even this past week when we were kind of getting ready for the show, I said, wow, Steve, man, how did you manage to work around those steps that I showed on the screen earlier and the whole God thing? Because I thought to myself, I've always described myself, Steve, kind of more of an agnostic. Maybe there's God, maybe there ain't. How the fuck do we know? Nobody can really prove it, And where I'm at in my life and program today is I say, I choose to believe. And I do have a belief system. I really gravitated toward the Hinduism thing. I grew up as a Catholic. I was raised that way because that's what the family did. I was just going through the motions like anybody else. And then I walked away from all that for a big part of my life. And the program reintroduced me to like what we're talking about on this show today, trying to be open-minded to different things having to do with spirituality and enlightenment and stuff. And so I just thought to myself, it would be interesting to hear from you about how you were able to work around some of them things. And I don't mean to take words out of your mouth, but I do remember you telling me, well, you know what, Glenn? I still pray because the literature tells me to. I don't necessarily pray to a specific God, but I send it out to the universe. Is that a good way to describe what you told me, Steve?
Well, I don't really care where it goes. That's the whole point. The thing is, the literature says to do these things, and a lot of people have told me that God can simply be good, orderly direction, right? Am I willing to just follow direction? Am I willing to just do what the person ahead of me found? And more importantly, all the answers to your questions are in the literature, whatever literature that might be, especially where it says things like it can be the group, it can be, the program, it can be God. Like you get choices, and one of the third steps talks about how it that this choice is without catch. Nobody can say anything about it, The thing is in this program or in these programs, if the open-mindedness is indispensable, right? One of them speaks very clearly about that. And the reason it hasn't been an issue for, actually, it also says that we have to be honest about if we're expecting any lasting results from our spirituality, right? Whatever we're going to call that. Mm-hmm. So that means like, I can't sit here and tell you one thing and then say some other things and do some other things. Right, and I can't sit at a table and feel like I need to tell you that like I agree with what you agree with, because then I'm lying to myself and I'm not going to get the benefits because I'm still people pleasing. I'm still doing those things. Mm-hmm. And it's funny to me that people will be like, I really thought that you were, religious. You're so very spiritual. And I'm like, well, I tell them one has nothing to do with the other. Yep. I love some very, some people that I know that have some very devout religious beliefs. They live, they're good to themselves and they're good to other people, and they don't really get involved in all of the, other stuff that's going on. They've learned to let people just be who they are, mm-hmm. And not pass judgment on them. I like when we talk about those things. There's something I've posted many times that says I try not to judge because I too have not lived a righteous life.
Right.
I have flaws, all kinds of things.
Yeah, well, Steve, I can't thank you enough for sharing that with us, and I'm glad you mentioned you posted something, because just friendly reminder to everybody, Steve is very active on social media, and he kind of chuckled when I said, "Where Steve, we're going to describe you in part as a social media influencer," and sometimes we don't even realize it, but you are, bro, because I watch those reels on the daily, and they're very inspirational. You have thousands of followers on TikTok, on God, your Facebook, I think, has even more followers than your TikTok. And I love watching them. They're just short, quick reels, y'all, with a daily inspirational message. And just thank you so much for that, Steve. And we're going to talk to you more in a moment, because I think that's a great transition to our girl who's been standing by so patiently, Melissa, who also posts inspirational videos on social media. And Melissa, I just love watching them. And I can't thank you enough for being on the program with us today. And I'm just so excited to hear more about how things are going with you, being a life coach, and, you know, a little bit about your journey with spirituality, because not to steal your thunder, but, you know, to kind of help introduce you, we talked a little bit before the program about, you know, what your belief system is. And if I can paraphrase and say, you're kind of non-denominational. Is that a good way to describe it, Melissa?
Yeah. I mean, I would say I am a very spiritual person, kind of like what Steve was saying. You know, my beliefs have like changed and grown and evolved so much since I started my recovery journey. Like, I actually came into recovery and got involved in a Christian church and Christian groups. And, you know, for the first little bit, that was kind of where I was finding my place. And it was helping me grow in my spirituality. And there was a point for me that just, I found that wasn't where I felt that I was supposed to be. And just through following the signs and, you know, following my intuition, following my higher power, I kind of was led to what are my spiritual beliefs now, which is, you know, I still call God, I still pray, but for me, spirituality, God is an energy, a force, a power in everything around us. It's in nature, it's in the animals, it's in us, it's in energy. And yeah, so I would consider myself a pretty spiritual person. I think what I have done for me is, like, my beliefs are kind of like accumulation of bits and pieces of different religions and spiritual paths that I've picked up along the way. And I truly believe that you can connect with God anywhere. Like, I listen to some Christian music and I get that feeling and I feel strongly connected. And at the same time, like, I'm burning sage and buying crystals and, you know, do cacao ceremonies and all those things. So for me, I feel like my belief is that they can't all be right, but they can't all be wrong. And do what your heart tells you to do. I would say that, like, my spiritual beliefs and my spiritual connection is strongly what led me to coaching, because, you know, I was like involved in the program and I'm still involved in the program, but, I found myself feeling like I was missing this piece of, you know, following my purpose, you know, and I literally just kept praying for God to show me the signs. And this was something that kept coming up. I love mentoring women, you know, specifically women who are, you know, coming from addiction history and overcoming trauma and abusive relationships and all of those things, because I know the path to, like, empowerment can be a struggle when you have these backgrounds. It can be a kind of a confusing path. So my spiritual beliefs is strongly what led me to life coaching, and it's going good. I'm still very new, but I love it, man. I live and breathe this stuff, and I love sharing about it, because if I can just say one thing that can save another person a fraction of the pain that I had to endure to learn a lesson, like, then it was all worth it for me.
Wow.
And
Well, Melissa, you just kind of repeated what our motto with this show has been all along. If we can help even one person, then it's all worth it, you know? And man, I am just so happy. And, you know, as you know, Melissa, I've heard your whole story. Talk about a comeback. And man, it's just so powerful. And as I alluded to a little bit earlier on some other things we talked about, I don't even think you realize what an inspiration you are to other people, specifically the girls. I'll say, though, to people like myself as well, and so I really appreciate you sharing part of your story today. One of the things I was thinking about while you were talking, because you mentioned, like burning sage and things like that, which for me, when I explored that, it was this Native American spirituality where they, will smudge a home or whatever. And I'm into all that.
Mhm.
And I love rituals and things like that. And Shivang, you talked about it a little bit, even with like the puja, how it's all very symbolism or symbolic and ritualism. And I was even thinking, it's the same thing in the Catholic Church, when I was a kid. And, we would go, up to the altar for communion or Ash Wednesday, and they put the ashes on your forehead, or, they got the incense they're swinging, and they, sprinkle the holy water. And so, all these different, religions, man, that word, for some reason, I'm always reluctant to use it. I think it's all that program shit kicking in, because it can be scary to some people. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, it's considered kind of a topic you really want to tread carefully with. And, like I said, we're not talking necessarily about religion on the show. If that's been your path and that's what you found, hey, man, more power to you. We ain't here to judge nobody on this program. One of my favorite sayings is, do you. Whatever's working for you. And, all the more reason, I just can't thank all three of you for being on the show today, because you each bring a different perspective. Shivang bringing the whole Hindu perspective, Steve bringing a perspective of atheism, and now being involved in helping forward this Dharma recovery program, which is kind of based on Buddhism. And then Melissa, you sharing about, just kind of a non-denominational journey and vibes in the universe and energy like that, because that's where I'm at, man. That's kind of my whole thing, because like I said, y'all, it's been a struggle for me. And I want to say this, y'all, because I've said this on this program before, and I said it again today, and I just really want to reiterate. I don't ever want to alienate anybody on this program. Now, I joked around about money, politics, and religion. And politics, that is one topic I will not get into on this show, because, man, people can really get their button pushed quick on that. But the statement I've made is, like, sometimes people will come to the meetings and all they want to do is get clean. They don't want to hear about no God, no nothing like that. And sometimes you'll hear people say, oh, God, here come the Jesus people, all going to pray over me and save me. And I just want to reiterate, I didn't mean that in any negative way, y'all. If it might have, offended somebody, didn't mean it that way at all. I was happy to hear what you said, Steve. I have all the respect in the world for people who do have a strong faith and practice what they preach, if you will. I admire that in people, It's just, for me, my experience was when I professed this faith that I, quite frankly, pretended to have, the whole fake it till you make it thing, I felt kind of like what you alluded to, Steve, like a phony. Like, God damn, I'm just sitting here saying this shit because, and so, Shivang, you and I, man, we've had long and deep
I wanted to say something, actually, man, that you reminded me, because we're talking a lot about, like, the open-mindedness, and I remember it was a lesson you taught me, Glenn, actually a long time ago. Me and Glenn, we both have a love for music. Yeah. And he knows that I like listening to like trap, like hardcore, like gangster rap music. And he one time told me, he's like, dude, that music is good, but like, if you're not open to everything else, you're depriving yourself of all the beauty that everything else has to offer, all the other sounds. And I kind of try to apply
that? Man, that was pretty good.
You told me that, bro. And I try to apply that in my spiritual belief system, because how I look at it in my journey is that I'm always open to change. Like, as soon as I start believing that my belief system is superior to someone else's, then I'm depriving myself of what is out there for me to learn. So I think that open-mindedness, at least for me in my journey, it's been very important.
Yeah,
So.
for real. And you know what? Going back to even what I was just talking about, trying not to offend anyone, just like you guys, I'm sure, and everybody else who may be watching or listening or come across this program, I have family members, friends, colleagues, and whatnot who are very devout, whether it's Christians or, for God's sake, my sponsor is Muslim, and so what you just talked about, Shivang, is so critically important, I think, in the recovery process of being open-minded to all these different things and not judging anybody. So I just wanted to clarify. I wasn't being negative, y'all. It's just being honest. When you're kind of like I refer to myself sometimes, a street rat from the hood, which is my younger years. The whole spirituality thing, like I talked about, was I was too terminally hip and fatally cool for all that. And like I said, even for example, the whole idea of going to a kirtan or a puja, back in them days, I'd have been like, man, I hope none of my boys from the hood see me, or some shit like that. But thank God I'm not like that today, and that I'm more open-minded to this kind of stuff. And I'm just trying to do the next right thing, y'all. As we say in the program, keep putting one foot in front of the other and just trying to stay alive one day longer. And I love the way you put it, Steve. I try to do what the literature tells me, because that is a path that we know has worked for many.
To go with what Shivang said about the open-mindedness, and what you said about faking it till you make it. Like, I've had many men that I've sponsored over the years. I usually ask them, like, well, do you have any religious beliefs? And if they tell me something like, Catholic, or I'm this or I'm that, I'll be like, well, like, when's the last time you were at mass, right? And a lot of times the answer is like, oh, I haven't been there since I was 12 or 13. And then I will tell them, like, well, I hesitate to call you a Catholic then, or a boop, or whatever.
Right.
And they'll be like, what? I'll be like, here's the thing. If that's where you find peace and joy is with Buddha, Allah, Jesus Christ, whatever it is, you need to go do that. You need to go get in touch with that. If that's what you're telling me your higher power and your spiritual belief comes from, go do that. But just remember, don't leave us, because we understand the nature of the problem you have. They can help you with the spirituality, but they're not going to understand really what you're going through if they don't have the same background, same concerns that you have. And that's what I do with that, like that fake it till you make it. Like, some people are just so indoctrinated that they still think they're this, and they really have no idea what they are. But these programs give us the opportunity and tools to, like, decide and to learn what we're going to do. In fact, one of the programs speaks about this as a program of learning. Right? So as long as I'm open-minded and I'm always willing to hear what you have to say, and like Shivang said, not just decide like you're right or you're wrong, but listen to what you have to say and take that in and process it. Even if it's not something I'm going to incorporate in my life, I've still learned something, which is a lesson I taught my children when they would say things like, well, I failed, Dad. And I'd be like, well, what'd you learn?
Right.
And they'll be like, well, I learned la, 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 la. And I'd be like, okay, then you didn't fail.
Right.
As long as we tried, and as long as we're doing something, or we're taking information in and we're being open to it, we're not failing.
Yep.
So Shivang saying, those things about the open-mindedness, and you talking about that fake it till you make it. Sometimes we just have to ask them and point them in direction. Like, if you're going to say those things, then go be those things.
Yeah.
Find that peace. Because you're not going to find it just sitting at a table if you don't believe the table or the literature is that power for you.
Yeah. Wow, that's a great point. Well, several points you made there, Steve. And, that's one of the things, as we know, because we all been around the block in the program for a little while, is, once you take the dope away, there's that old thing, the parable of the empty mind. We got to get clean. After we do, though, if we don't try to make some important changes, how you going to stay clean? I've said it on the show before, and I know y'all have heard it before. There's that old saying, any old asshole can get clean. Send them to detox. Send them to treatment, kick in your sister's basement like I did, whatever. But how you going to stay clean? And so this whole path of enlightenment and
Glenn, can I cut in there and say, not
do,
even whatever term, whatever program uses, sober, clean, whatever. The real question we need to ask ourselves is, how are you going to recover?
Yeah,
how are you going to change those things? Because what we end up with is people in the rooms that don't do the work, and they're miserable.
Yes.
You know, and that to me is far worse than saying God or Jesus or Buddha or Allah or whatever it might be for you. It's far worse to have that terrible attitude and you're telling people at the table, well, I've been this or that for 20 years, 19, 30 years, and you're miserable. All of these programs, whatever they are, 12 steps or otherwise, offer you a way to recover and to find peace within.
Steve, that is such a great point, and I'm so glad you brought that up. You know, it reminds me of an old friend of mine, that boy Louie. A lot of y'all from the Motor City will remember Louie. He lives in Orlando now, but he used to say all the time to me, Glenn, what are we recovering from? And so, Melissa, I think this is a great transition to talk with you again, because you mentioned, you know, in your journey of doing the life coaching thing, you know, you're working mainly with girls, I'm assuming, you know, and not just on getting clean and things to that nature, but you mentioned even, for example, abusive relationships. And, you know, I know even myself here, I'm a grown ass fucking 61-year-old man, and I'm still processing shit that happened from my childhood. The longer I stay clean, this shit comes up, and I'm like, where the hell did that come from? I thought I put that to bed a long time ago. So what Steve just said, I think you'd agree is important. You know, once we get clean, a lot of things start to come up that we're covering from in addition to getting clean. Is that part of what you're doing with the whole life coaching thing?
Yeah, I mean, so like I said, I'm still fairly new in the life coaching field. But I certainly don't intend to necessarily coach women who through getting clean. I think my vision is that, just like you said, you know, when you come into recovery, right, you have this opportunity. I call it an opportunity. It's a necessity to start working on some of those issues, right? Because and that's where spirituality really comes in too, because they always say, like, you can't fill the God-sized hole, or I don't remember what the saying is, but
I know what you mean though.
But yeah, I mean, my vision is to work with women to overcome some of the barriers that we have that keep them in the way of really essentially living their best lives, right? Because I mean, I believe you have to treat the human holistically as a whole, like mentally, physically, and spiritually. Like, you know, I can't be eating like shit and, you know, kicking the dog and expect to be happy in my life. I can't, you know, have all of these like super heavy issues and not being address them and expect to, you know, have peace in my life. And whether you're using the 12 steps or whether you're, you know, for me, that work has been so imperative. And so, yeah, I mean, I know, you know, I had to really overcome some, issues with belief and identity in terms of like being on the path to what I call, like, I don't know, freedom, really, you know? And so that's my vision for the women that I want to work with, and women that want to work with me is, you know, we won't, you know, overcome those barriers and see these people, without judgment and with love, and to let them know that they're not alone. Because I know, you know, when you have these issues, when, you know, most women who are overcoming addiction have had, you know, issues with sexual trauma and physical abuse and abusive relationships. And a lot of times those beliefs are so heavy and so strong that we're navigating our life through these goggles, essentially. And you need help to take the goggles off. You need help figuring out what these beliefs are and where they came from in order to change them, so you can identify as a different person and essentially have a different life experience. And for me, like, that's all a part of being connected to, I don't know, that which is greater, God, you know?
Wait, didn't I tell you, y'all, that she's amazing? Melissa, everything you just talked about fucking blow my mind. So I can't encourage everyone who's watching or listening to follow Melissa on, you know, all the things, platforms. She's on Insta, Facebook, whatnot. And she has her Insta handle there if you wanted to reach out to her about potentially working with her as a life coach. And you know what? Melissa, you talked about something that Steve, you alluded to as well. At the end of the day, and I share this at meetings all the time now, and sometimes I'll be driving home going, man, I keep saying that over and over. It's, for me, because I got the dope out of my system now, as we often say around the rooms, I don't have a drug problem no more. I haven't used dope in over 2 years. I do not have a drug problem, but sometimes I have a thinking problem or a peace problem. And that's what y'all both alluded to. At the end of the day, for me anymore, it's all about protecting my peace. Ooh. And, you know, what were you going to say, Melissa?
Oh, no, I agree, man. I feel like I have worked so hard to have an experience peace that, like, the gloves are on at all times. Like, I am just not willing to compromise with that. I'm not willing to jeopardize that. So, yeah, I agree.
Well, I'm glad you did. And, you know, we say on this show sometimes, there's an old saying, it was attributed to like Winston Churchill preaching to the soldiers during the war. But he would say, when you're going through hell, keep fucking going. You know, you'll come out the other side. And so I like to say that on this program a lot. If somebody's watching this program, which very well may happen, who's trying to kick, who's going through withdrawals, they got the cold sweats, the restless leg and arm syndrome. They feel like they're crawling out of their skin, got that hamster wheel running in the cage. You can't eat, you can't sleep, you got insomnia, you're sick as hell, you got no energy. Keep fucking going. You will come out the other side eventually. And where I was going with that is, when you've been through hell like that, man, you sure appreciate your peace a lot more once you finally obtain it, and you will do whatever you got to do to protect it, you know?
To go with what you guys are saying, like, you know, just to adjunct to that, is we also need to let them know that it's a process, right?
Yes,
so in January, I was 318 pounds.
Wow.
I'm about 256 right now, right?
Wow.
And I'm almost 10 years in recovery. So
That's
the
awesome.
thing is like, our spirituality also grows with that, right? But sometimes we're not mature enough or knowledgeable enough or even ready to deal with some of the things that we have to deal with. So we have to remember that this is a process and it's on a curve. The drugs are one thing, and being productive member of society, paying taxes, starting company, all these things, you know, all of that stuff, me deciding that like I needed to really look at my relationships with women and with food, right?
Yeah.
Because for me, I really like, I tend to date women that have some issues, right? But that's because I didn't have that. I didn't have anyone in my life, and these were the people I knew, right?
Yeah.
So when I was ready to address that, therapy is also a massive part of my recovery. My friend Rachel Detroit, she's also a life coach. You know, she does the holistic thing, putting yourself on a schedule, eating at the right time, having the right foods in your system. Are you meditating? Are you doing some kind of yoga, exercise, something for yourself? She's really, really good. She does. Melissa, you may want to look her up on Facebook. She's wonderful. She lives in the Detroit area. She's been doing it a long time, and she's very young. And I met her at Refuge before it was Dharma. But just the importance of that, like, even if you're not where other people are, you're not where you think you should be, that's the process. And when you're ready emotionally or spiritually, it'll happen for you.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
I appreciate that, Steve. It definitely is a process. And by the way, bro, man, I didn't know, Steve, that you were on this fitness journey as well. Congrats again on the weight loss, bro, because I will tell you, I know that ain't no easy task. I've told my story on the show, and that's one of our topics in the hashtags. I kept trying to surrender food, which is impossible.
Yeah, I have to eat. But what me and my sponsor worked through was whether this was women or it was food, right? Because for me, they're both very, very pleasurable in the moment, and then it's painful, right? And I'm sure it works both ways for both parties, you know?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, I'd love to have you back on the show when we focus in on fitness again to talk about your journey.
Fitness is that I didn't surrender food. I surrendered bad habits. Right. So I haven't been to Taco Bell in months. I don't really eat fast food. And I put something on my phone. My doctor told me a long time ago, it doesn't matter what diet or whatever you're doing. If you're eating over 2,000 calories a day, you're going to gain weight.
Yeah.
If you're eating under that, you're not. So it was just small changes for me. And I don't like to deny myself because I'm selfish and I'm still working on the self, centeredness. I like things. and I like the food that I like. What I've learned is that I don't need to finish everything that's in front of me. I don't have to gorge myself anymore. Yeah. So the bad habits around it are what I looked at. But that, again, is part of that spiritual journey. And that when I was ready for it, the answers came to me.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, because I think, a lot of it is we're programmed, like when we're kids, mom would say, clean your plate, and so, we go out to a restaurant or whatever, they pile it on because they don't want you leaving hungry, and say, well, they didn't give me enough food, and so we're just programmed and like mind washed, brainwashed into eating everything on your plate. And you're right, bro. I had to retrain myself. I've shared on the show, and not to get too much off into the whole fitness and exercise thing, but it's like people, because I lost 50 pounds, bro, 50 pounds then since I got that recovery belly, that I've talked about on the show. And people ask me, well, Glenn, what diet did you go on? And I say, well, I never went on an actual diet. I just started eating healthy.
To go what Melissa said, trying to fill a guy-sized hole, right? And I tried to fill that hole for years with food.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But the truth is until I was honest with myself about what my spirituality was or wasn't, where my belief systems lied, and like I could own that and be comfortable with it and let other people know those things, I was still trying to fill that void with something other than just coming to love myself, right? Now, which is still very, very hard, right? But the spiritual process of this is, since January, I've lost all that, I've lost that weight. I'm still continuing. When I looked in the mirror in January, I hated who I seen. Like, I don't dislike Steve as a human being. I think I'm a good person.
Right.
But I look at this thing and I'm like, yeah, no, man, like this is not okay, and then, but I wouldn't do anything about it until I got to that place where spiritually and emotionally, I had worked through what I had to work through with step work with my therapist, or I shouldn't have said that was a word, but with my therapist, with the recovery work that I do,
right,
got to that part in the arc for me where, like, okay, now I'm ready, and that's all part of the spiritual process
like
that
you
we're
said.
talking about.
Yeah, it's a process.
I wanted to add something, kind of what.
I was going to say, Shivang, go ahead, bro. I was going to.
Yeah, man, that God-sized hole. I feel like that's talked about a lot, and something Melissa said really like rung a bell with me. And she said that she worked hard to gain her peace, and that's important. That took me back to when I was in treatment my last time. I was in Mexico. I might have shared about it a little briefly. I'm not going to go into all the details,
right.
But that facility was very different than Western healing. There was no talk therapy. There was no, there was no groups. There was none of that stuff. And I remember I was at a point of misery. I was in the room and I literally was telling the owner, I was like, dude, what are you trying to do to us here? You're taking away our food, because he had us on a clean diet. He's taking away TV. He's taking away music. He's taking away interactions with people, taking away cigarettes, all the stuff that rehab centers give. And I was losing my mind, and I remember asking him, like, what are you trying to do? And I remember he taught me a lesson that I'll never forget in my life. And he told me, I'm going to teach you to be okay with yourself with nothing. Because once you go out there, you'll realize that you have everything inside of you already. And that lesson, I didn't understand it at the time, but it really just connects to kind of with what Steve and Melissa were saying. Once I learned how to have peace internally without anything outside of me, it's like, why do I want to fuck that up? Right. But kind of like you shared a little bit, like you talked about, Glenn, daily maintenance. If I don't take care of myself, then I start fucking that piece up.
So that thing you're talking about, Shivang, when Glenn and I spoke earlier this week, I told him that like I'm not a Buddhist at all, but like I'll go to temple occasionally, right? Because I like the energy there. And I like the meditating, and I also like the mantras, right? I like the chanting. But what I really enjoy about them and what really sits well with me is that, just like what you're talking about, no matter what has happened to me in the past, I'm holding on to that, right? So that's within me. If I want peace and I want to let go of it, the power to do that is also within me. I don't have to look outwardly for it. I don't have to ask anything for it. I have to do the work to let it go and to be okay with me. And that is one of the, amongst all the other precepts that they have, but like, it's just one of the things that I enjoy about that. And I would assume Hinduism is close in that philosophy, because they're very, very close in what they are. one is taken from the other.
A lot of crossover. Yeah.
But it's just a wonderful thought for somebody who doesn't have that kind of belief system. My belief system is spirituality. It's the principles of the program I'm a part of and how I live my life. I tell people all the time, I live my life righteously because I want to live a righteous life. I don't need anything else. Like so the peace comes from the work I do and not from anything else. And that's just for me. So like I said, and that's part of that process is what Glenn said earlier, still praying, right? And people are like, what are you praying to? I'm like, it doesn't matter. Right, it literally, even if it's meaningless, I was told that this is what I should be doing. And if I want the benefits of the program I'm a part of, I have to do what they asked me to do. Right. If not, I'm working Steve's program, and we all know what kind of trouble that gets us into. Right. In my program, I can do whatever I want, and I do devious things when I'm left to my own devices.
Yeah. Right.
So
Speaking of that, Steve, and I don't mean to interrupt you. I'm telling you, this is how my sick mind works, y'all. I'm listening to all of y'all and enjoying this, but there for a moment I was thinking, God damn, if the four of us would have got together when we were all still using, man, it'd have been a big old mess, wouldn't it? Because I know y'all's stories, but,
Yeah, but I would have done anything I could do back then to fit in with you, so it wouldn't have mattered.
Yeah,
I'd have done anything you wanted me to. Right. As long as you got some drugs or some money.
Yep.
Yeah, sure. I'm all of those things too.
And you know what? That's a good point, Steve, because, as you guys, I'm sure all know, when you're, staying clean for a while and people have started to develop some trust and confidence in you again and some respect that you're actually doing this thing, you're staying clean, you're involved in recovery. Sometimes we'll get asked for advice or just input like, hey, what's that NA thing all about? What's that AA thing or whatever the program might be, Dharma, recovery, whatever. And one of the things I always tell people, Steve, you just alluded to, is that please don't cheat yourself and judge any of the 12-step meetings or any group you might go to by the first one or by the first group of people, because it's so eclectic, It's like you kind of, again, alluded to, we partied at Park Place and Park Bench, and when you go to meetings, it's the same thing. You're going to meet people that are in the rooms from Park Place or Park Bench, and so our sick thinking when we get clean can judge us right out of the room like, oh, I ain't as bad as them people or them sick ass people. I don't want to be associated with them. So I tell people all the time, if you're going to try the meetings, just keep going back, and eventually you'll find one where you feel right at home and fit in, or a group of people that you can relate to. But it doesn't always happen right out of the gate. And what happens is, this is where the comparison comes in. Like you said, man, when we're getting loaded, whether it's at the dope house or at the bar sitting next to somebody you don't even fucking know, if you're getting loaded together, you don't give a fuck, it's somebody to use with. And then we come in the program and we'll start, becoming a little righteous and judging people, saying, oh man, I'm better than them or whatever. And it's like we can cheat ourselves. So I'm glad that you talked about that,
What's that old story of, if you're judging everyone, you're worried about what they're doing, take a glass of water, a full glass of water, and walk around the room and try not to spill any of this filled glass. And when you get back to me, they get back to you and say, so what was everyone else doing? They're like, I don't know. I was watching the glass. It's the same thing. Watch your program. Watch what you're doing. Because I try to explain that. I hear people talk trash about all the programs, all the meetings, all the time, especially my home group. But I tell them, like, who did you put around you? I'll hear them talking about, but my experience hasn't been one of those. My experience was one of love and kindness, but I was very discerning about who I went to, who I let near me, because we forget that in these rooms, we are dealing with the sickest people mentally, emotionally, and spiritually on earth, and we expect them all to be, very honed adults, and they're just not.
And everybody's at a different level. Like you said, and we've all alluded to, it is a process. And, there's an old saying around the program that kind of goes right in line with what we were just talking about. And I know you have all heard it, that some are sicker than others and some are sicker than most, So you do get people from all walks of life and at different levels or places in their recovery. You got people like that girl D we talked about at the top of the show, celebrated 40 years clean this past week, and then I'll go to a meeting and be sitting next to somebody at their first NA meeting. They're at a totally different place, and so it really is a process, and I really appreciate
I like what you're saying, Glenn, with the process, like add to what you and Steve are saying. I think one of the beauties of recovery is the freedom to see what works for you. Like Glenn and I are very close, you know, we're like brothers, you know, and we talk a lot about our journeys. And he's known that lately I've been more attracted to the Dharma principles, and I've been trying to go to Dharma meetings. And, you know, for me in my journey, I stayed at a Buddhist monastery for a little short span of time, and I learned a lot of those principles. And here I am 2.5 years in my recovery, reattracted to the Dharma, you know? So for me, it's like, it's ever changing, you know? And it's just, I think that's like one of the beauties is we get that freedom to walk the path that we choose, you know? And
well, you know what, Shivang, I wanted to bring something up with you specifically, because we kind of had you on ice there for a few minutes when we were talking, and you and I talked about this past week, that you shared something on social media recently, and I had asked you if you might, you know, elaborate on it today. You know, and I know, you know, because like you just said, we are close, that you wouldn't mind me sharing this, that part of your journey is, man, you know, something that I and anybody who knows you benefits from is you've been through all kinds of counseling and therapy and treatment centers and, you know, meeting with, you know, psychiatrists and things to that nature. And you bring that wisdom to the table, bro. I love that, man. I get that energy from you, you know, and I think that's one of the great things about the program is we all can help each other with some of the experience and wisdom we bring from the recovery community. But where I was going with that is, and it goes right back to what the real topic of this show was, you know, the focus of today, enlightenment and spirituality. And I'm paraphrasing here, and I definitely want to hear you elaborate on it. What you were saying in your social media post was, at the end of the day, for you, at least where you're at in your journey now, and I'm in the same place, bro, all the psychotherapy, all the counseling, all the meetings, all that, it's all great. And it's, to me, a very important part of recovery. I'll also say you went on to say, and again, I'm paraphrasing, bro, but that where you're at in your journey now, at the end of the day, it is all about spirituality and enlightenment and your connection with a higher power. Is that a good way to describe what you were trying to say?
Yeah, so I think what you were trying to paraphrase is I made a post recently about explaining, and like I said, this is my subjective belief system based on how I got clean and the experiences I had. And I got clean in a very bizarre way that I don't recommend for everybody, but it worked for me. And we'll get into that probably a different time. But what I was trying to portray is that I'm a person that believes in psychiatry. I believe in medicine, MAT. I support it all. But at some point in my journey, I started believing that all of science is trying to describe what spirituality is known for centuries, you know, and some people might argue against that, but I don't know, man, just based on the experiences I've had, you know, I feel like a lot of mental illness, there's a deeper rooted spiritual problem. And in my belief system, I believe there's a spiritual warfare going on our planet constantly, you know, that's under our eyes in the metaphysical. And, you know, it manifests itself in physical symptoms, whether it's physical illness, relationship problems, emotional issues. And that's why, like, me and Glenn, you know, we have a similar perspective. And we used to always joke about how, like, we were possessed, bro. I was
going to say that.
And if I show you my video of getting clean, man, I got to get a hold of this video of because I did a ceremony to get clean that I won't get too deeply into. But if you watch this video, I was having an exorcism. You know, that's the only thing that makes sense, you know. And I think what I was trying to portray in that video is like, dude, when there's people out here sick and suffering, we want to ridicule them. We want to judge them. Oh, here he goes again. He's doing his BS. But at the end of the day, in my belief system, a lot of these people aren't themselves, bro. Like, they're possessed by some kind of energy.
Shivang, if I may, thank you so much for sharing on that. But yeah, you're right, man. In fact, I'll say, y'all, boy, this took a lot for me to do this. But I did a show. I don't know what episode it was. If you go back on, you know, and look through them, they're all on the Dare Me YouTube channel. You just click on the videos tab. Every episode is there. And I did one where I showed, which is really popular in the Recovery Out Loud community now, it's kind of trendy. I showed all these before and after pictures. And some of my before pictures are pretty rough, y'all. I look at them pictures and I think to myself, I don't even know who that guy is. And so what you were saying, Shivang, is true. I truly felt like I was possessed, man. And I remember, I've shared this on the program before, but I'll say it again. I flew to Detroit. Most people leave Detroit to get clean. I was living in Central Florida, and I went back to Detroit to get clean. And I went to my sister's house because I didn't want to go back into treatment. For some reason, I just didn't want to. And she let me come there and stay, and I kind of kicked in her basement. But when I first got there, I'll never forget it, man. That night, we're standing in her kitchen, and I'm running my mouth, going off whatever the hell I was going about. And she just kind of interjected, and she goes, you know what? Shut the hell up. I don't know who you are, but you are not my brother. I want my brother back. Now, think about that for a second, because, anybody who has struggles or has had struggles with addiction, man, you got that battle going on inside of you, this person who is a good person battling that person who's hopelessly addicted. Melissa, I couldn't help but notice your body language. You were kind of nodding and smiling when I said that. Is that something that you can kind of relate to on that level of, feeling like you were possessed,
Yeah, I mean, my spiritual beliefs, everything, and I try not to get too deep into it, but everything is energy. Everything holds a vibration. And when we are using and we are drinking or we are sick and sad, we are vibrating at a very low energy, which makes us more susceptible to lower entities. So yes, like I very, very, very much believe that at some point we are open to darker energies. And for me, like having that spiritual belief it's not necessary. I want to make that clear. Like I think you can absolutely get clean without having a spiritual understanding or relationship with a higher power. But for me, it was crucial. It was imperative, because I had to have something to hold on to pull me out of that dark, because I truly, truly believe that I had, whether you call it, whatever you want to call it, if you want to call it a lower power, a lower energy, Satan, whatever you want to call it, it's still going to be what it is. The disease, you can think of it as the disease. For me, I mean, that force was very strong, and I had to just like keep reaching up to something pure and something white and something.
Yeah. Well, you know what? That's the perfect place for me to interject. And I can't help but, mention that you just used the word white, because we're going to watch a video in just a moment here. And it's a testimonial that Bill Wilson, Bill W., one of the founders of NA, did before he passed away. And, not to sound like a history buff or whatever, but the fact of the matter is he was the guy that was the catalyst for getting the 12-step program started. And part of his story is he does say that he felt like he was led to getting sober and developing the 12 steps with Dr. Bob by some type of higher power, God, whatever it may be. And he talks about that in this short video clip we're going to show. It's not very long, but I thought we'd show it on the program today. Before we do, though, I wanted to mention, because, you mentioned, Melissa, things like, a lower power or Satan or the devil or whatever you want to call it. And I haven't even acknowledged we have had a very, very active chat room today. And so I just want to do a couple quick shout outs. I want to say hi to Lori again. We got Wesley in the chat. We also have Kelly in the chat. Who else? My God, we got so many people in here. We got Dennis in the chat, Najia in the chat. So anyway, thank you to everyone in the chat for participating today. And also, it looks like we still got about 15 viewers watching us live. So thank you and welcome to everybody who's been watching the show. Again, as I say, we get most of our views and listeners on the recorded version where we get hundreds, but we always love when people chime in live. So I want to say hi to all of y'all. Now, Dean, if you would, can you bring up the next video that, I had ready. And again, everyone, to preface it, this is Bill Wilson, and he's sitting with his wife, by the way, who was the catalyst for getting the Al-Anon program started that Nar-Anon's based on and all that, which is kind of for families of the person who's recovering. They're recovering from it from a family perspective, too. So you'll see a little clip of her in there. It's not the best quality because it's old school, but you'll be able to hear it. So,
and then I remember crying out, if there is a God, will he show himself? And then came the miracle, the great central experience of my whole life. The room instantly lit up in a blinding glare of white light. I was seized by an ecstasy such as I had never known. It seemed to me that I then stood on a mountaintop where a great clean wind was blowing. I thought to myself, but this is not air, this is spirit. This is the God of the preacher. How long I remained in this state, I just cannot say. And again, I have no words to describe what it was like. At length, however, I found myself on the bed, but now I was in a new world. A world in which everything was right, despite the wrongs of the world I had been living in. I felt myself filled with the consciousness of the presence of Spirit, of God. A great peace stole over me. And there I laid and reveled in this new and loving consciousness.
Go, folks. So, yeah, man, boy, I don't know about y'all, but I get chills when I watch that because, obviously Bill was getting later in life and was older there, but when he got sober, because he passed away in 71, he was 35 years sober, and them fucking cigarettes took him out. He died of lung cancer. Them guys all smoked like crazy back in them days, you know what I mean? The thing of it is, though, yeah, he was older there, but when he got sober, he was a young guy, just like, I like to say I'm young, but he was younger than me, but the point is, man, that is just so powerful for me. And to have the founder, him and Bob develop the 12 steps in the program. I mean, there's some history if you really know it before that, the Oxford group and Ebby and all them guys. But at the end of the day, they developed this program that is, as we talked about earlier in the program, worldwide. What was it? 180 different nations, millions of people and lives that it's touched and saved. And here it all started with some stockbroker from New York and a doctor in Akron who got together over coffee to bullshit about, God damn, man, this booze is fucking killing me, man. I need somebody to talk to. And they found out just by two drunks talking to each other, they were able to help each other and stay sober. And then out of that grew the other 12 steps programs like NA, OA, GA, and all that. And, at some point in time on this show, man, because like I say, y'all, I go to AA meetings if I want to, and I love their, singleness of purpose, and I can adapt and, relate to the people there. I'll also say for me, I go to NA, I feel right at home. That's what I am. I'm more of an NA guy, but I can go to any 12-step meeting and adapt to what their, main purpose is. The point I was going to make is, for those of us that know, in the NA program, there's a real rich history as well with the guy who's ordinarily considered the founder of NA, Jimmy K. So we'll talk about his story on another edition of the show. But y'all, I just thought showing that video would be kind of a great way to bring this thing full circle, because for a lot of people, millions of people literally, Bill is considered almost to be like a saint, like a disciple, like this, we heard his story. He felt like it was a God-sent program to him. And, Melissa, I keep calling you Alyssa, that's my daughter's name. Melissa, you talked about the white light, and, that is what a lot of people experience. And so and Bill talked about it. And for me in my life, where I've come, y'all, as I said it earlier on this program, for most of my life, I've kind of felt like an agnostic. Maybe there's God, maybe there ain't. How the hell do I know if I can't see it, feel it, touch it, hear it? And I had a guy, an old timer, say to me, well, Glenn, how do you know you've never seen the face of God? If you really believe that God is everything or God is nothing, how do you know you haven't seen the face of God? I've even said myself, sometimes I feel like God speaks to me through other people, So it's like, if I look at it in that way, it gives me a whole different perspective. I was joking around in a meeting once. I said, man, I've been spending half of my life running around looking for God. And meanwhile, it's been right here the whole time,
Glenn, Melissa's signing off. She wants to say bye.
Okay, well, Melissa, thank you so much. I know we held you hostage a little longer than you thought you'd be able to stay on the show, but thank
no, it was
you
a pleasure.
So much. And again, for anybody who may be, thinking about some life coaching or whatever, there's Melissa's contact information. And again, if you're not writing it down right now, you can go back, watch the recorded version. So before you go, Melissa, anything you want to add?
I just really appreciate being able to be here and share my give my input and yeah, no, it was great. I'd love to be back someday. And I appreciate it. So I hope you guys have a good one.
Detroit.
Yeah, well, we'd love to have you back down the road again, Melissa. And thank you again for being on the program today. Go do you, and we'll talk again soon, okay?
All right. Bye, everyone.
Thanks.
Glenn, you guys were talking about how you didn't feel yourselves, right?
Yeah.
And there's literature that speaks to like the substances turned us into somebody we didn't want to be. And I kept thinking about that because like no matter how good I've been or how bad I've been, like being out there, I was somebody I didn't want to be. And recovery has allowed me to really start to find that person.
That's a good
Shivang, I love the ohm behind you.
Yeah, that's a great background, bro. I love it, man. I like it.
Next time I'm going to do the 3 jewels.
Yeah.
You said what?
Next time I'll have the 3 jewels, the 3 gems, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha.
Sangha, yep.
I love that one though, Shivang. You gotta stick with that. Well, hey, Dean, it looks like we have a little time if we can. I always try to end the show on a little bit of a humorous note, and I'm sure the same with you guys. We're active on social media. You can't help but see all these kind of funny memes people post all the time, and so throughout each week, if I see ones that make me chuckle or whatever, I'll capture it. And we've been making kind of it part of the show each week. We show a few of the funny ones. So, Dean, if you want to bring up, we just got a couple. I can't click because I don't see the screen right now, but there you go. So this one I thought was funny. Whoever told me to leave my car at the pub and take the bus home, turns out I wasn't in no state to drive the bus either. So that's kind of a funny one, I thought. He had the wrong idea when they told him to take the bus. And then this one caught my eye this week. You'll see there's a road sign that says use LSD. And of course, I thought that tied right into the program, talking about drugs and addiction and recovery. And the person is a friend of mine, old colleague, Karen, posted this, and she laughed about it, saying, when you come from Chicago, LSD means Lakeshore Drive, which is true. If you ever been to Chicago, that's one of the main roads there. But I thought that was kind of humorous. And then, of course, considering today's topic, enlightenment, spirituality, I thought this was funny, kind of a take off that Carrie Underwood tune, Jesus Take the Wheel. And it says, very funny, Jesus, give it back, missing the steering wheel there. And then finally, we had this last one. Actually, I think we might have a couple more.
Yeah, there's one more.
This one says 3 things cannot be long hidden: the sun, the moon, and the truth. And, we talked a little bit about Buddhism today. Obviously it's not really a humorous meme, but it caught my attention from bro that I follow, Stay Solid. And, hopefully, I guess is why I wanted to show this one. I think it's a good transition into wrapping the show up is, hopefully today we helped shed some light for anyone that's looking to find their way from an enlightenment perspective, spirituality, whatever, that maybe we help you find your way to your truth. And this is also very therapeutic for me as well. Steve?
I like to tell sponsees of mine, there's a difference between the truth, telling, the truth and honesty. The truth is something you tell when you're caught, and honesty is a way of life.
Yes.
So I like that meme.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you said that, bro. It makes me feel even better about showing that. Well, hey, guys, I cannot thank you enough, and I'm sure I'm speaking on behalf of all our viewers and listeners, too, for y'all being on the show today and participating in the program, because like I said out of the front end, and it worked out even better than I could have possibly imagined, that we didn't want to turn this into any kind of debate, which we didn't. We just wanted to have a lively discussion from different perspectives, Here we've got, a guy who's a practicing Hindu. We have someone who's an atheist, but, is open-minded to things like Buddhism and going to temple and stuff. We had Melissa, who's a non-denominational person, but does pray and is, very spiritual from an energy and vibe and universal perspective. And then you got my crazy ass wandering aimlessly, just trying to find my way, but I just thought it was a great, very, very interesting, informative, and fascinating discussion. So again, I can't thank you guys enough. And Dean, I want to thank you, man. You truly are a rock star, bro, because I know I bombarded you with a lot of stuff this week. And, we talked this morning about getting everything in order, and I don't think this show could have gone any smoother from, a technical perspective. So thank you so much. Before we wrap up, I just want to add, Steve, is there anything you'd like to add before we say so long to everyone?
Just, if people are out here seeing this or listening to it,
right,
give yourself a chance. Whatever you choose to do as your program is yours. And remember that it's a process, and, life doesn't stop doing what it does. You're still going to run into problems. Things are going to happen. But as long as you don't, use anything, you'll get through those things. And, love others and love yourself.
Right. And Shivang, how about yourself, bro? Anything you'd like to add before we say so long?
Just tell somebody that you love them today. If you haven't already, tell somebody that you love them.
I like that, bro.
Love you, Shivang.
Yeah, love you too, bro. I can't wait to see you guys when I come back to visit here sometime over the summer. So I'll wrap it up, too, in closing, and just say, y'all, that if you're a person who came across this show who is struggling with addiction and you're still in active addiction, you're looking for a way out, we sincerely hope we might have shared some things on this show today that might help you along the way. At the very least, if you're in the middle of kicking, hopefully we helped you kill some time, because I get it, man. When you're dope sick and you're trying to get through that, the clock moves at a snail's pace. So, we took a little bit over an hour and a half of your time to keep your mind occupied. Go back and watch all the other episodes of the show. They're on the Dare Me YouTube channel, the Dare Me Facebook page, the Twitter page. You get the idea, and it'll help you kill some time. So we really do sincerely hope we might have shared some information on here today that will help someone. And for anyone who maybe is not in the recovery community, we certainly hope that we provided an entertaining show for you. And then I'll wrap it up with this, y'all. For those of us that are in the recovery community, because I know we have a lot of people that do watch and listen to the show who have gotten clean and are living clean now and, trying to do the next right thing and stay clean and recover, that, we always want to remember, man, it was something I was taught, I didn't come up with this. It's something that y'all freely shared with me that helps me on the regular. It ain't the last one that'd kill me. it'd be the first one that would get it all started. So I just try to remember on a daily basis, part of my mantra, one away forever, man, one away forever. Because my thinking will still romance that shit sometimes, you know. There were good times until they weren't good anymore, and it was freaking miserable, and I got to the point where I used because I had to, not because I wanted to anymore. And if you're struggling with addiction, you know what I'm talking about. So anyway, with all that said, Steve Shivang, thank you once again for being part of the show. We also want to say thank you to Melissa again for being on with us. Dean, thank you for everything you did behind the scenes. And with all that said, y'all, I should mention, before we go, next week we aren't going to be live. Dean and I are still working on how we're going to do it. Dean had a previous commitment, and I'm going to be out of town in Las Vegas, believe it or not. I'm going to see Keith Urban, believe it or not, for a couple nights. And so I may record one from Vegas, like with, you know, the strip in the background or some shit, and then maybe we'll play it at our regular time, 6 p.m. West Coast, 9 p.m. East Coast. But that's something Dean and I are still working on. We'll have a program on one way or another, whether it's a previous one we did, but we'll go live again in 2 weeks from tonight. But you can always go and watch these programs anytime you want, like I said, on the Dare Me YouTube channel, Facebook page. And if you do go to them, we really appreciate it if you subscribe, share, like, do all the things. It helps with the algorithms, y'all, and makes it easier for people who may be looking for information on addiction and getting clean and all that stuff. Make it easier for them to find what we're doing. So anyway, with all that said, y'all, if you're struggling, keep fighting the good fight, and we'll see you next time on the Dare Me podcast.